What a week. What a day in American history, in world history, in human history. Not a great one, but I stayed up until this point to record the intro of the podcast so I could end with some good news or start with some good news. What side is up? What side is down? So I could start with some good news at the end of a story that is pretty insane. And before I bring on my guests, the Sklar brothers, the hilarious Sklar brothers, and the hilarious Daniel Van Kirk, the hosts of the Dumb People Town podcast, an amazing, hilarious podcast. Hello, Brain Trust. It's Ben Glebe. This is Last Week on Earth. This week has been bonkers. I'm about to go through all of it with the Sklars and Dan. But I had to do a little intro, of course, first of all, to introduce things. That's how introductions work. Secondly, because this day was bonkers Ladesh. You know what I'm saying? This was like next level bonkerific in every level and on every level. This was the most insane day I've seen in American history. The saddest day I have seen in recent American history. Pitiful, disgusting excuse for a day. But it's almost over. And despite a literal coup attempt, a violent coup attempt at the nation's capital, Trump supporters spurred on by the president himself, holding a rally that morning outdoors in D.C. with violent undertones, saying we're all going to go march down to the Capitol building after this and cheer on the patriots trying to decertify the election and not be so nice to the ones who are trying to certify it. Following Giuliani, who said we must have a combat mentality. And his idiot son, Don Jr., threatening the Republicans that didn't literally overthrow our democracy and ignore the results of a free and fair election for his dotard of a father. Now, I promise you this episode is going to be very fun and funny. And if you want to skip straight ahead a few minutes from now to the main chunk of it, an hour and 20 of fun podcast goodness with the Sklars and Daniel Van Kirk, the Sklar brothers and DVK, you do it. If you know this story and don't need to hear my thoughts on that, you just want to get right to the funnier, more, it's a good group vibe. It's like Cheers, the old television show. I'm old. You guys know the show Cheers? But I'll not bury the lead too much further. The good news is that it's done. It's finally certified. Even after a violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, Congress resumed. Some of the senators that were going to vote against it finally changed their mind after they were literally forced under their seats, fearing for their lives. But most didn't, and almost none of the House members didn't. Still, there was 7 senators that did not change their mind, and over 100 House members that voted against the results. Even after all that, they came back. They didn't get enough senators to challenge the results in a few of the states they were going to, like Georgia or Wisconsin, but they did in Pennsylvania and still had to break for 2 hours of pointless debate when they knew it would fail 100% because they didn't have the votes. Because it's treasonous, traitorous bullshit. Because it was a free and fair election and the president's making it up completely that there's fraud. But people are so gullible and stupid. Brainwashed by this moron. And if you're going to be brainwashed by a smart person. At least you feel a little bit less stupid. But being brainwashed by an idiot's got to sting. When you wake up from that brainwashing, it's not going to feel great. It'll be some major Home Alone, Post-Cologne, Post-Malone, slap your face. Oh man, that stings kind of sting. Of course, Home Alone 2 featuring Donald Trump, and that's where his career should have stayed. Cameos in holiday movies instead of ruining our holidays by trying literally to overthrow our democracy. So these morons, QAnon people, mostly white supremacists, mostly neo-Nazis, the Confederate flag made it into the halls of our power. Didn't even make it there during the Civil War. There's been no one breaching the walls of our Capitol building since the British burned it down in the 1800s, early 1800s. I don't know the exact date. Not Encyclopedia Britannica or an Encyclopedia Brown. I don't even know who that is, that character. I think he is not positive. But the greatest and saddest irony of the whole damn thing, not irony, it's not even the right word for it, the greatest, saddest contrast of the whole thing is that the Capitol Police, who arrested me when I protested there in a planned, announced act of civil disobedience, we told them we were going to do it, arrested me and my friends, no problem, who were peaceful and civil and quiet and didn't try to breach the building. More importantly, the Capitol Police that had war gear on, army gear on, militarized gear on to face against the Black Lives Matter protesters who were largely peaceful, whose intent was peaceful, and were there just protesting police breaking the law and just begging law enforcement and our country as a whole to respect the law, to respect their rights. They were met with overwhelming force and batons and tear gas and cleared out and gassed and low swooped by helicopters because Trump wanted a photo op with an upside down Bible because he doesn't know how to read, outside of a church in D.C. across from the White House. But yet this protest was planned, coup makers. I don't know the term for it. Coup maker, attempted coup people. People attempting a coup. Had it on a calendar, announced, and the president was there and said, let's go, you all go do it. I'll be there with you, we'll be together. And of course he doesn't go because he's a big old pussy. A bop, as it were. They had like 15 guards there. I think the actual number was like 115, but covering the entire Capitol building and the surrounding parts of the town. That ain't enough. And not only were they overwhelmed quickly, but they let these people in. They were taking selfies with these people. If you don't at least want the perception that you're racist, if you don't want the perception of white supremacy being as real as it is, don't take selfies with the white protesters storming the gates of our government. But yet they did do it. Yet they did do it. Selfies, opening the doors, letting them in. They had sticks because they didn't even pull their firearms out, and many of them didn't even have their firearms. The few guardsmen that were in advance deployed did not have their weapons on them because they didn't want to escalate things. When there's a planned rebellion against your country, you didn't want to escalate things? Excuse you and excuse me and excuse us together naturally. How dare you even have that be a thing? Because they're white? Because they're Trump supporters? Because Trump didn't order the National Guard to impose law and order? Where was your law and order tweet now, bro? All caps. When they're on your side, you're not so into law and order anymore. And Trump didn't even call them off for 90 minutes. Why would he? He instigated and told them to do it. And then, when he does call them off, it's with a bullshit, weak-ass 1-minute video after Biden came out and gave a beautiful speech and implored Trump to step up. Trump releases a 1-minute video where he says, again, reaffirms the lies, restates the lies that it's a fraudulent election. Restates again that he won by a lot, completely made up out of his dumb, thick, meathead orange mind that his minions, 70 plus million of them, believe anything he says. Says even though he won and the selection was stolen from us and they keep stealing it from us, and this is what happens when things get stolen from us, go home peacefully. Things slowly de-escalate after 4 people's lives were lost. 4 people. 1 woman shot by the Capitol Police inside the Capitol building. Inside the Capitol building, bloodshed. A violent coup attempt. Not even a bloodless coup. A life was lost, and then 3 others due to medical emergencies caused by the building being ransacked and thousands of people running towards the entrance. Crazy Burning Man looking dudes, even though I love Burning Man. But Burning Man looking dude with like horns on and no shirt, a QAnon guy holding a QAnon sign, ends up sitting at the main desk, the top of the dais, where moments earlier, literally moments earlier, Pelosi and Pence were up there presiding over the House, a joint session of Congress. And no one stopped them, but perfectly like Donald Trump. Perfectly done for a coup organized by a self-interested idiot like Donald Trump. These rioters, these treasonous traitors, breach the Capitol building, get into the rotunda, into the halls of Congress, and had no plan, and are just in there taking fucking selfies. One dude stole a podium, posed for photos. He will be in jail soon. Most of these people will be in jail soon. One dude stormed Nancy Pelosi's office, was looking at her computer with her email up, left a note on cardboard saying, "We will not back down." Ooh, tough dude. I promise this podcast gets funnier in a minute once I bring on my guests and I have fun with them, because I like people. I like people. It's a weird thing to shout, I realize now. But this has been the saddest, most hard, most frustrating day. I've been watching the television, except for the recording I just did with the Sklars that you're going to hear in a minute, and with Daniel Van Kirk. I've been watching this from 10 a.m. until what is now almost 2 a.m. Pacific. That is 14 hours of this. And 4 people gave their lives for this joke. And just like Trump, these people came in there with no plan, a disorganized mob of uncontrolled chaos, a disorganized mob with no plan but to try to fight for Trump himself, exactly what Trump does. No plan, no ideology, just fight for his damn self. Well, for one person's preservation, it sort of makes sense for himself, but for the millions that do it to support this person who doesn't care about them, the largest scale idiots possible. But nevertheless, they were there. Only like 15 to 25 arrests, like 15 at the Capitol building, another 15 or 10 in the rest of DC, out of thousands of people trying an actual coup, trying an actual overthrow of our very democracy. That's not white privilege. They get literally given the keys to the house and say, go fuck around inside the House chamber. People climbing down the walls. Democrats protest, as I say later in the podcast, I believe, Democrats protest for people's rights and Republicans protest against them. Every time. Against the rights of people to have their voice heard. Against a woman's right to choose. Democrats vote or protest for equal human rights. For immigrants being treated poorly, even though it doesn't affect their life, or it's not their exact life story, because they have something called empathy. But God forbid ever walk a minute in somebody else's shoes or imagine what that would be like. And even after people come in with guns and firing fire extinguishers and smoke bombs going off and flashbangs inside the U.S. Capitol, senators and congressmen having to duck for cover Only 6 of them changed their mind. The Republican Party's done. They should never, ever again call themselves. No one should ever call themselves a Republican. That party's lost its name. It's lost its value. It's lost anything that means anything to anyone. It's just a party of losers, traitors, hypocrites, and self-interested assholes. So if you have some conservative leanings, call yourself a Democrat, or just call yourself an American or an independent, or decline to state and vote for some and advocate for some Republican policies, but don't be a Republican, because that is the party associated now with being a traitor to the United States of America. Plain and simple. Okay? Is that a deal? I'm going to have to calm down now somehow, because I have to transition to the fun, funny, more lighthearted, but also at some point serious part of this podcast with my wonderful guests, who, by the way, their amazing, hilarious podcast, Dumb People Town, that you should subscribe to, is doing another live one at Nowhere Comedy Club on January 16th with special guest Zach Galifianakis, a hilarious man. You can get tickets at nowherecomedyclub.com. Be part of the live audience. Be part of the VIP. I suggest you do that personally. But before I get to that, just 2 other things. My shoulder even more fucked up than before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like moving less, and my shoulders, now I can't lean back on a couch. My shoulders like, that's a little much. So I got that going on. You can subscribe to my Patreon if you'd like, to patreon.com/BenGlieb. You have to know the URL because they don't have a functioning search function. You can get free tickets to some of my shows. You can get exclusive private Q&As, private video chats one-on-one with me, letters sent to you from me, the exclusive Glebe Squad Brain Trust Black Card membership card mailed to you. Great behind-the-scenes footage. I'm going to release at some point in the future the National Lampoon Glebe show there, some other fun stuff. I try to give a lot of great stuff to my patrons, so please, if you've enjoyed the podcast for a long time, all this free entertainment, please consider subscribing to the patreon.com/BenGlieb. Of course, also the other show I do for free 4 days a week with Hofstetter and Bowers and Queen Rachel, the Social Distancing Social Club, SDSC, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific and Saturdays at noon. We didn't do one today on account of the world crumbling and our nation being attacked by our own people. But we usually do it, and it's fun, and it's light, and it's not political. Almost always. So check that out. Join us in the video front row. Play the pun game. See if you win the grand prize. And also, my last 2 things to announce before we go on to it, maybe 3, but very quickly, is this Saturday, January 9th, I'm doing my next show at Nowhere Comedy Club, Glebe Off the Top, Crowd Work and Improvised Madness. Leah Lamar is hosting. Come be one of the mad ones. We've built an amazing community. It's growing every week. We elect a new mayor every week. You could be the mayor of Mad Ones. I'm the Mad King. You get that? I was president and I promoted myself because this is a fun, imaginary, weird world we're creating. And I can do that. I kind of did my own coup, but it was like nonviolent and everybody was cool with it. That's the kind of coup to do. If everybody's fine with it, then it's okay. Tickets at nowherecomedyclub.com, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern, this Saturday, January 9th. And another one the following week, also on the 16th, but before the Sklar Brothers Dumb People Town begins. Lastly, there's some cool new Mad Ones gear and other Brain Trust gear in the Glebe gear store, benglebe.com, and click on the store, and you can get that stuff. I just got some shipped to myself. And I'm doing Minute with Glebes 5 days a week. My take on different topics, about a minute, on my Instagram. And then soon coming will be 5 days a week, a new stand-up video from me, largely crowd work, largely me capping on fools. Hope you understand. So all that said, after the Sklars leave, I will do the Twitter answers at the end of the podcast. And on that note, Daniel Van Kirk, a hilarious human being, got to start in the Groundlings in UCB. And Randy and Jason Sklar, who you not only know from their legendary show Cheap Seats, their podcast Sklarbro Country, from being on Glow and Better Call Saul. It's the Sklar Brothers. Please enjoy right about now. Now, my friends, you will have that podcast coming to you if you're watching this live stream right now. It'll be released sometime later tomorrow. Hopefully, if our processor in the UK. Declan can get it done in time. If not, it'll be Friday morning, but I think it'll be tomorrow. And now we'll jump to the Twitter answers. Just going to shout out the people that answered my question of the week that I put on Twitter every week for the last 11 years. Let me just quickly check these comments out before I do that. Let's see what some of you are saying. Yep, it's 4 a.m. where you are, almost that where I am too. Yes, a very crazy, disappointing day, Renee. What up, Dante? How do you fast forward this? Impossible. Yeah, it was quite a strange day. Oh, shit, I forgot an important part of the good news. Oh, and one more thing. Can I put that in there? I don't know. Nah, maybe I'll do it right before the Twitter answers at the end. So I'll do in a second. Be easier to edit. Yeah, today was fucked up, Shannon. Police reform is definitely overdue. Cannabis Jones, best name in the world. What else we got? Yeah, I assume the other people were trampled. That's what I assume happened to them, or maybe it was heart attacks. Who knows? Yeah, it was definitely traumatic, Saint. Thanks, Nestor. Owingo, long last name is here. They can still be teabagged, though. That is true. I'm sure you're referring to, but anybody can be teabagged. Thank you for the super chat, Owingo. Yes, any of you watching on my YouTube can super chat me anytime. I just activated that for the first time ever, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you ever want to know any of you too, my Venmo is at Ben Glebe. Straight up. Pretty easy to find. 25th Amendment now for sure, Scott. I'll address that quickly as well. The Twitter answers when I come to that, but they don't ever do it. Teresa, it's true. 13 arrests, complete garbage. But all right. Wow, my first ever super chat. Thanks, Wingo. My own personal one. Hello from England, Susie. Hope you're doing all right. Okay, so now we'll just do Twitter answers, my pre-selected ones from Twitter, and then I'll say goodnight and actually go to sleep. We'll have to then send this, upload it, send it, title the episode, write the description, but then I'll sleep at some, at some fucking point. Who the fuck knows? And I have to get up in 6.5 hours. Fuck, I always stay up too late, and then I have to get up in 6.5 hours. It'll be 6 every time I go to sleep. Anyway, here we go. And now it's time to check in with the Glebe Squad, the friends with benefits, the brain trust, the Glebe of extraordinary gentlemen, the big Glebers and all of us. It's time for Twitter answers. I asked the brain trust, if you lived in an alternate reality, what would your life be like? Catherine Eban said, after the last 4 years, don't we now have an answer to that question? That is a very good point. Could it be weirder than this? Could it be more alternate than this? This is the alternate 1985 from Back to the Future 2 that we were all living in. Ironically, that character of Biff, that version of Biff, patterned after Donald Trump, the asshole billionaire living in a fucking tower being mean to his wives. Which reminds me, I forgot one of the great pieces of good news, so I can now end this podcast with another piece of good news, which is, Trump's words mean nothing. But moments after Pence finally did what was right, finally grew some balls and honored his simple constitutional obligation after all of the insanity of the day and certified the electoral votes, Trump put out a statement saying, and I quote, and of course still calling the election into question because he's such a little bitch, but he says, even though I totally disagree with the outcome of the election and the facts bear me out, nevertheless, there will be an orderly transition on January 20th. So he's at least promising for the moment an orderly transition. He also said if the Electoral College certified him, he'd honor that and then just try to coup on his own government, which is a pretty, confusing move, to say the least. But at least he put that statement out there for whatever that's worth. And it's worth almost zero, but it's something. And Kayla Gibson, in an alternate reality, what would your life be like? She said, politics wouldn't exist. I'd live in a house with a big yard and a bunch of dogs where I'd just play with them all day. I'd have my own personal chef to cook for me and help me cook. And Idiot Test would have new episodes for eternity. I like that world. I'd have work. And I love dogs. And if politics didn't exist, that'd be fucking fantastic. Unfortunately, they do. I try to get away from them and they pull me back in every time. I just did a Godfather-esque movement and my shoulder hurt doing that. Fuck. Am I going to have do I have a shoulder thing happen? I have a doctor's appointment coming up. I'll keep you posted. Matthew Corey, our old buddy at RollerDogNC, said, in an alternate reality, I'd be listening to your podcast called Next Week on Earth, where you would give stock picks. I'd be rich. Again, first of all, how do you know you're not listening to that? And I would definitely go on Oracle and I would try to invest in Tesla shares because they're about to come out with that new flying car situation in a couple of years, and it's pretty amazing. Very similar to the Sports Almanac from Back to the Future too. I hate to bring it all back to sequels of 90s movies, but there you have it. Paul Harvey at PaulHar666. In an alternate reality, I would shout, I'm on smack, dog. I want to empower you to live your dreams, Paul, because you can do that now. I just did it in this reality. If we have one consistent reality, I'm not so sure anymore. John Duggan, one of our patrons, said, it's at Predator Johnny, by the way. And by the way, Kayla's at KGibson97315. At Predator Johnny said, I wouldn't have blown out my knee. I would have gone to the military college and had a military career. Wanted to help people. Now I do health and safety, security, first aid, and disaster response for the university I work for. So you're helping people. And you don't have to accidentally get killed. I mean, there's nothing more brave than being in our military, but you're doing an incredibly brave thing as well. So don't worry about it. You cool, boo? Why did I call you boo? I'm sorry about that. Netcirc at Dwee Barella, and our second to last answer says, do I get to choose my alternate reality? Could I live in basically the same reality, but Philadelphia sports teams don't fucking suck so much? Not being embarrassed half the year would be cool. Yeah, I grant that. Sure. It's been a long dry spell for us here in LA sports too, but this year's pretty good for us, so I'm cool with it. And finally, in an alternate reality, what would your life be like? Amanda at WKBDM says, non-existent. Very literal interpretation and interesting and probably accurate. In any alternate reality, it's very likely none of us would be here. So I guess take this solace. Despite how fucked up everything is in our world, we could not be here at all, and that'd be worse. That's a nice thought. The being here, not the not being here. I hope that wasn't not clear. Until next week, this has been Last Week on Earth.